Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. And welcome, hipsters, back to another exciting episode of Hips News. Today, we're going to touch base on some very important yet not being spoken about so much, but it is happening and it's affecting all of us, especially people of color. Today we have a guest. Shorty has returned to drop some knowledge. And Shorty, would you like to say a little something for the listeners out there?
Hello, it's nice to be here. I'm in Hachioji, Japan. It's a suburb of Tokyo out in the mountains, and I live out here. And it's nice where I live. My environment is really good. I have had some run-ins though, but those have ceased to be.
Okay. Vessel two, would you like to say hello and thank you and welcome back to the podcast?
Yeah, what's
Oh, there
going
he
on,
is.
Shorty?
Hey, what's going on?
Yeah, I'd like to give my shout outs to you and everybody else listening to this podcast. All is well in my kingdom, or hopefully all is well in your kingdom also.
Yeah.
I look forward to today's topic, and I'm here to learn.
Oh, me too. Yeah.
And with that, let's get into it.
Understand, young folks, when you put property rights ahead of human rights, understand you're tampering with nature. That's right. You see, property rights is controlled by man, and human rights is controlled by nature.
Hello.
Okay. Yeah. Today's podcast again, like I was mentioning before, is a very sensitive subject. Something that has been not addressed directly, but people know about it, and when it occurs, it's not always justified or not to the point where you feel justice has been served. We're talking about racial profiling and police brutality and the actions that they have taken. And again, in this subject matter, we only want to pinpoint and kind of show the spotlight on these incidents that's been happening and yet hasn't been action hasn't really been taken care of these injustice or criminal actions that they have placed upon. Shorty,
Yeah.
since you're the OG of this, um, can you give us, a little bit of history and speak on the things that that's on your fresh on your mind that you want to get off your chest?
Oh man. Well, I'll be 67 in September, and uh, I've had a well, in the beginning, dealing with the police officers wasn't that bad. Being born in 1956, uh, they didn't have all this weaponry and everything that you guys are dealing with, and they were more involved with the communities. Uh, that was up until well, it got a little testy when Reagan got in office, but it was
Mm-hmm.
when Nixon got in office that things began to change. But anyway, well, actually, it was changing when Reagan was in office, but it wasn't as bad, you know. When I was a kid, to give you an example, we had a house and everything, driveway, garage, backyard, front yard. We lived in a predominantly Polish area of Cleveland, and the elementary school was cool and everything. Anyway, when I was little, like 3, 4 years old, I saw this movie. Finian's rainbow. He said, look to the rainbow, and it was really great. And it was a pot of gold at the end of that rainbow. And they was upstairs arguing and everything. And me and my little sister was watching that movie. So I got it in my head that, if I see a rainbow, I know it's gonna be a pot of gold at the end of that. That take care of all the family problems. So I saw a rainbow one day, and then I followed it. I just kept walking with my little behind. I kept walking, following that rainbow, and it got dark and it went away. And I sat on the curb and I was crying. I didn't know where I was and how to get back home. I was about 3 or 4 years old. And the police drove up. They said, is your name Derek Jackson, little boy? And I said, yes. And they says, oh, God, we're glad you found you. And they just had on like a uniform. And it turned out I was looking and everybody knew everybody. So my mom, she didn't punish me. And then once I explained it and everything, everybody started laughing and it got me home. And he stayed and she gave him some food and called him by his name. And I was watching all of that, So, I was listening to that and I thought to myself, I said, you know him? And she says, oh, we all do. And I said, what? She said, he comes to the community meetings. I asked Mom, can I go to those meetings? And she went, yeah. I went to the meetings. There'd be 3 or 4 officers at the meetings and they would put their input and people would say what they had to say. And things was cool. It was cool back then. Then we moved to 93rd and Union from 131st and Edgewood in Cleveland, Ohio. We moved to 93rd and Union, a street called Benham. It was all Polish. It was the same thing. They had a neighborhood watch. Everybody was looking out for each other. The police was the same way. Everything was fine. And then the script flipped because what happened was Reagan got in the office. Next thing you know, I'm turning around, man. It was like military, man, the National Guard. So, and then we started watching stuff on TV, man, and it was getting crazy. So I was trying to figure all that out. I couldn't figure it out then. I was too little. But I gradually watched the change. And the change was that they wanted to industrialize policing. That's what they wanted to do. In other words, the city was being offered from the government money for policing. In other words, it wasn't about to protect and serve anymore. It was about how much money you can make. In other words, it became a business by shelling out tickets and doing this and the other. This is before initiating crimes by police gangs and stuff like that. It was first about writing tickets, making sure little kids got in trouble so that they can arrest them and put them into homes and stuff like that, and conditioning them. In other words, in the Reagan era, they conditioned African Americans to be violent, to get in trouble, to steal, to do things like that. Because all of that went towards the state, where the state would garner money from the government in order to open these facilities to put these kids in. You understand? We used to have in elementary school and junior high school back in the early 60s and stuff. We had counselors. We had people that would come to your homes and sit down to see if your home was stable enough for you to be there. If not, then they would scare the parents by taking them to court and resolving issues that way. And these were small court things. These were juvenile courts where they can sit down and the parents would be involved with the whole thing. All of that was cut away, And then if say a kid was mentally unstable, he was mentally challenged or something like that, they had big buildings where they can go in and help the kids and do all that. Reagan took all of that away. He started slicing that off. He started taking away funding for that, and the state would go along with it, and they started arming the police. And basically, what they would do is they would tell the police, you have quotas. You have to go into that neighborhood, and if there's a small problem, embellish it. They would embellish those issues in the African-American neighborhoods, that were older than me, that were my friends' big brothers and stuff like that. And we didn't know what they was doing, and they started arresting them, like crazy, and they would disappear. They'd be gone a year or two, then they come back and, I just got out, it wasn't like, we used to hang on the corners. We couldn't hang on the corners anymore because they would come and shush us away, and the officers that we thought that we knew before, if they didn't do what they was told to do by their precincts, then they would be moved to another precinct and they would bring in officers that the neighborhood didn't know. And those officers were a little frisky, they would be pushing stuff. So we moved from hanging on the corners with the alcoholics, we moved to the parks. Ours was called Bisbee Park. We would go to Bisbee Park. Now they wouldn't come up in there and mess with us. But if they saw us hanging out in front of the drugstore or the liquor store or the neighborhood market or something like that, they would shush us away and we would all just go to the park and hang out and we drink Colt 45, and laugh and stuff like that. And we all go home at sunset. We was like, what, 12 or 13 years old around then, but I'm just giving you the lowdown from about 12 or 13. It wasn't the community groups were broke down. It was becoming predominantly Black, which is what they wanted, and the police people were moving on to the west side of Cleveland. By 9 o'clock, we got home. If you wasn't home by 9 o'clock, that's when the patrols would come around and ask you what you're doing around here. And they start messing with you. They think you're stealing, you're breaking into places and stuff like that. So, there were some of us in a different group in the neighborhood that said, well, if they want us to break in stuff, then let's do that. We'd be like, oh man, you don't want to do that. He said, that's Mr. Brown's shop, man. We've been knowing Mr. Brown since we was little. And then he said, ain't nothing about that now, man. So this was a slow, gradual process, the way they moved it up. Yeah, so Reagan got in the office and turned that coin. And once that coin got turned, the police officers started going, well, hey, the neighborhoods are getting a little bit frisky, man, and we can't control it all. We need more officers in this particular area and stuff like that. And we started to see more officers patrol. They'd be riding up and down the streets. They never did that before. So my mother go, why are they riding up and down the streets and stuff like this? This is before the Huff riots. We was watching them riding up and down the streets and they was looking for trouble. So we was just like, what's going on here? So I didn't understand it then. But what had been instituted was what they call quotas. They had monthly to turn in as many tickets as they can. They had a quota that they had to meet. In other words, they changed the system. It wasn't about protect and serve no more. It was about, have you met your quota for the month? It became a business. So they slowly built that from the late 60s up until today. And today, they are armed just like the military. And they said they need that because they're scared of us. But nobody's telling the truth that they created the environment for us to act the way that we act. Right now, you're dealing with a corporatization of policing, okay? It's corporatized. They get millions of dollars. I mean, anywhere up to $50 to $100 million, to operate, okay? So for them to pay you out $1 million settlement for killing your little brother or something like that, for doing something wrong, that ain't nothing but a pinch because they got 100 to 200 times more of that coming in on a yearly basis, or should I say annually? And you can check these statistics out if you want to, but that's how it works. It has been industrialized. So we've got industrialized policing going on right now, and they're unionized. I mean, unions have been destroyed, okay, over the past 40 to 50 years. They have been destroyed, okay? Except there's a healthy police union, a very healthy police union. They've got, the police are protected anyway from any fault. That's what you see happening. I mean, there's a little boy in Cleveland, Ohio. He had a toy gun. He was at the park. They shot him dead in a doorknob. That cop went and got a job at another precinct, And And this is happening all over. They don't have a computer base to check for bad policing. You understand? So, to become a police officer, it used to be extremely difficult. Like here in Japan, you got to come from a very good family, or you have to have an extremely clean record and everything. And then you're trained not to use your weapon. You're trained to negotiate. The only time you can pull your weapon out is if you see a weapon coming towards you, and you can pull it out, but you're still not allowed to use it in Japan. And Japan has what? Less than 1% of police killings of regular people and stuff like that. And they've got a great system going on. I mean, nobody's really armed. I mean, it's hard for you to get a gun license in Japan because they learned real early. They said, people don't need that. If you hear about killings in Japan, it's mostly by knife. It's rarely by a gun, and if it is by a gun, it's a handmade one. Somebody just made it. So and European countries, it's pretty much the same thing. Most of the British police, they walk around with billy clubs and stuff. Some of them got guns, but they're not allowed to pull them out and use them. They'll use a taser before they'll use a weapon because they know they can lose. Oh, qualified immunity. That's the word I was talking about. Qualified immunity. Being a police officer, you are automatically entitled to qualified immunity, no matter what kind of mistake you make. And that's what's changing now in the United States. That's what the big fight is about.
Vessel 2, let's what say you? Let's hear your input on this situation.
Yeah, I want to know. It's kind of off topic, but not really. You said you was born, Shorty, in 56, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And when you was young, it was a group of y'all out in the streets below age drinking, right?
Oh, yeah.
But the police was friendly at that time, so it wasn't really a problem.
Well, they call us by our name.
So it wasn't really a problem.
No.
But y'all was doing wrong.
Yeah, we was doing wrong. We would be taken home. If they decided to, we could negotiate. They give us we call it a 3-strike thing.
Right.
I see you doing that again, and we can do it. And then if they took us home, then, it was like an honor thing,
Right.
I got to take you home.
I understand. So then,
okay.
Fast forward, when you become teenagers, police change their MO, and they became more militarized, but y'all out still doing wrong.
Well, at that time, I have to say, yeah, we were, because half of the group I was hanging with, they lost their daddies because they had went to jail.
Okay, that explains why y'all doing wrong. Okay, so I see what the problem is as far as we're concerned is we do wrong and expect other people to treat us as if we didn't do wrong in the first place, no matter how they think or how they are trained to act. But when we do wrong, it's supposed to be overlooked. I'm not saying you. I'm just saying, generally speaking, this is our mentality as a group of people. So I grew up military household, so discipline was heavily instilled in us to where you just don't do wrong. And if somebody crosses you, you punch them in the mouth. It don't matter the uniform. It don't matter if they got on whatever. It's just you don't do wrong. So therefore, when somebody wrongs you, you punch them in the mouth. So I understand, everybody's not, everybody didn't grow up that way. But when it comes to the policing, I see your point, and what you're saying is valid because they have changed to where now it's privatized, and military industrial complex has pretty much taken over. And
they threw all of their equipment at them, and whenever they got too much equipment, whenever the military has too much equipment, the police forces can buy it off.
Right. But the point that I want to make is that it's not totally our fault because they came in and systematically destroyed our family units.
Our environment,
Right.
yes.
But at the same time, if we don't do wrong, they have nothing to lock us up for.
I agree with you there, but you have to understand they were conditioned to do wrong. A lot of those kids, and see, I wasn't really that bad. I just would have a little beer or something like that, and run around, play with my friends. I ain't have no knives or nothing like that. We would have regular little kid fights and stuff like that, and I would protect kids that were being bullied and stuff like that. Me and my boys, we would protect kids that were being bullied. I was a straight A student, man, and I was just hanging out with my boys, man, who were also kind of intelligent. And we were, and then, when we saw what was going on, then we said, man, we got to split up. We started hanging out at each other's houses unless we heard something was going down and we knew the kid that was going down with, and we go there and try to qualm it before the police rode down the street. The thing was, they was riding down the street looking for kids that they can institutionalize. And that's what bothered us, because we was like, it wasn't like this before, man. It wasn't like that. And you have to understand, those kids that are messed up, we used to, who lost their daddies and stuff like that, we used to be surrogates for the younger kids. We used to be surrogates. We would go in and take over because the mother would be gone working, and we call them latchkey kids, So we'd invite them over our house and stuff like that.
I was a latchkey kid, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Oh, you understand?
But
Yeah, big
what
brother,
I'm
and
saying
so
is,
yeah.
What I'm saying is, from your generation, we were born in the 70s. Me and Vessel 1, Vessel 2. We're both born in the 70s. So from your generation to our generation, it's not that far of a jump. But after us, from what I see, is now this younger generation, they have no one to sit up there and try to protect them from doing the wrong that they're doing. No one's scolding them to the point to where they can get it without stepping on their toes. But it's still us as a group doing, well, yeah, that's true. But it's still us doing wrong. You don't hear any other group of people in America going through the nonsense that we go through, because they're not in the streets. They're not hanging in the parks. They're not doing the nonsense that attracts attention, that is not necessarily wrong what they're doing to be kids. But what I'm saying is, all eyes are on us, and the police have been trained to target us, mainly because we're poor and we can't fight back, but mainly because as long as they got their foot on our neck, as long as they got their foot on our neck, then everybody else can just take it easy. But we don't learn the lesson of, okay, don't give them anything to harass you over. Don't give them anything to say anything to you about, period. And then when they do, then you're not wrong for your retaliation. It's all about, pimp or hoe. Now, I'd rather be the pimp than the hoe. But depending on the situation, you might have to play the hoe. But I'm not going to sit there and willingly play the hoe. So yeah, I truly understand, how you grew up and the change in what they did as far as how to control us. But the problem now in these streets is not necessarily them, because they already made their decision on who they're going to control. It's still up to us. A younger generation understand that, it's not necessarily your doing, but you're part of the problem. And until you stop being part of the problem, then no one is going to pay attention. Right. No one's going to pay attention to your outcry, because they're going to look at you as everybody else has been trained to look at you, as you are a useless eater and you have no discipline, you have no morals, and all you good for is to do wrong, which is not the case. But, that is the image that has been portrayed, and not only by us doing wrong, but that has been the image being portrayed upon us through the bigger demographic of America.
New York City neighborhoods ask about police quotas for arrests and summonses, and this is what you often hear.
There's a quota system. There always has been, and there always will be until someone changes it.
Y'all see that? That's what they targeting.
These NYPD officers, all currently on the job, say it's true. They've all worked the streets, the subways, and patrolled housing developments.
The department says there are no quotas.
Well, I could tell you, I'm a police officer, there are quotas in the NYPD.
Are they lying?
Absolutely. It's illegal for them to admit it.
They come from different precincts, largely minority neighborhoods in Brooklyn or the Bronx, but their stories are remarkably similar.
They tell you this to your face. Black Hispanics between 14 to 21. They must get stopped.
They're plaintiffs in a federal class action lawsuit that claims the NYPD is violating a 2010 state ban on quotas, speaking out together for the first time.
At the end of the month, these officers, whoever don't have that arrest or those few summonses, they're pressured to find something. You might not see nothing. You're supposed to be visible. You might not see anything, but you go hunting, like bounty hunting for an arrest. Locking up some old guy, some homeless guy, finding somebody who's riding their bicycle on the sidewalk, who's spitting, and you bring him in.
The problem is when you go hunting, when you put any type of numbers on a police officer to perform, we are going to go to the most vulnerable.
The most vulnerable?
Of course. We're going to go to LGBT community. We're going to go to the black community. We're going to go to those people that have no vote, that have no power. If we start doing what we're doing in Midtown Manhattan, a phone call to the mayor's office is going to be made. That's going to be the end of it.
We're the predators, they're the prey. The worst thing you can have is a police officer that needs an arrest for the month.
So you're all minorities. How does that make you feel?
It's horrible.
This is something coming from the top that trickles its way down, and this is why we're all here today.
We first interviewed Officer Edwin Raymond last month. He says he's been recording conversations with NYPD officials for the past 2 years in an effort to prove alleged quotas and retaliation against cops who don't rack up numbers.
They're breaking the law.
Raymond's claims elicited this expletive from the police commissioner.
Is my response to that.
The commissioner insists his policies are focused on the quality of arrests and summonses, not the quantity. The officer's attorney.
Is the commissioner lying?
Yes. Commissioner Bratton is lying.
How can you prove this?
I can prove it with testimony, with recordings, with documents.
All they want us to do is go out there and lock them up. They told us it's easier to get numbers out here because you work in this type of community.
Are you arresting for stuff that you shouldn't be arresting for?
Well, that's why we're here. We don't do it. We refuse, and because of that, we are retaliated against.
Because you're not harassing people, you're being punished. You know? And it doesn't make for a great work environment because they want you to harass people.
The lawsuit claims minority officers are punished more severely than white cops for failing to meet quotas. The city denies it.
And the community are suffering the most.
Because?
Because the pressure, because the quota. Because the police department is like a whore pretending to be a lady. That's what they are.
Are you worried? You know, this is a big step to come forward like this.
It's not easy. It's not easy. We are the enemies. We are the people that nobody talks to. The culture of the department, we are the rats. That's how they call us. We are the rats that speak out. It takes a lot of guts from a rat to stand where we stand, knowing that our career are basically over the second we speak against such a mafia. Because the police department is a mafia. It's a big organized mafia.
Let's say they listen to the cops and get in the car. Look what happened to Freddie Gray.
Yeah, and what if they make it all the way to the station? You remember Sandra Bland?
And let's say they do make it to trial. You see where that gets us? Don't you get it, Bo? The system is rigged against us.
Maybe it is, Dre. But I don't want to feel like my kids are living in a world that is so flawed that they can't have any hope.
Oh, so you want to talk about hope, Bo? Obama ran on hope. Remember when he got elected? And we felt like maybe, just maybe, we got out of that bad place and made it to a good place. That the whole country was really ready to turn the corner. You remember that amazing feeling we had during the inauguration? I was sitting right next to you. And we were so proud. And we saw him get out of that limo and walk alongside of it and wave to that crowd. Tell me you weren't terrified when you saw that. Tell me you weren't worried that someone was going to snatch that hope away from us like they always do. That is the real world, Bo.
Okay. Welcome back, hipsters, on the hot topic, and we was getting deep into it. Okay, as Vessel 2 was stating, the difference of the generations. And Shorty, you want to continue and you want to go a little bit further. Continue as what you were saying before.
Oh, okay. I mean, I have mad respect for the generation of the '70s because there was some stuff that was blocked out that wasn't passed along from my generation of the late '50s up into the '70s. It's like
Right.
in my household, it was pertinent that we learned the 8 parts of speech. Okay. By the time I was
Right.
4 years old, I knew noun, verb, adjective, adverb, pronoun, preposition, conjunction, and interjection. Okay. I knew that. I
Right.
had to know that. I had to know my multiplication tables. I had to know it was yes, sir, yes, ma'am. If anybody that was older than me, and there was a certain amount of respect that we had to have. And then you know, I mean, we had good peoples around us, you know. And but my whole point is, when I got out of school, not only was my learning, my mom was teaching me stuff that my great grandma taught my grandma, and this is one of them. It's called the Willie Lynch letters. My mom had me read the Willie Lynch letter, and I read that letter, man, and it shook me to the core. And it controlled us for close to 300 years. This is how this control system was set up. And what happened was after World War II, that got mangled because, you know, African Americans came home as heroes and stuff like that. We still had to go through the back doors. We still had to drink. It was for whites and blacks only. The toilets was for whites and blacks only. Yeah, we had to go through that for a little while, you know. But by the time I was 6 years old, no, about 7 years old, we can go sit at a lunch counter because Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and all of them had started doing stuff, you know. So, you know, we could start doing things, and all of that knowledge that I had attained, and the people that I grew up with had attained, who are still alive now. A lot of my friends, they're still alive right now, but we didn't share that information with the '70s generation. We were too busy trying to make a life for ourselves. We were in our teens and going into young adults. You know, we were trying to find our place in life and stuff like that. And we just kind of left the '70s generation behind, not passing on that knowledge. So the '70s generation were latchkey kids, basically. And they started just saying, well, I'll just make up my own thing. They started making up their own thing and stuff like that. By the time the '80s came along, rap hit. Once rap hit, it was no knowledge really in that except anger.
You subjected to the dog bites and the hoses being pushed turned on you.
Oh
and
yes.
such a So that was fortunate for you. Yes, and I have heard stories of when the neighborhood would, you know, everybody knew each other and it was tightly knit, and you know, as the old statement goes, you know, it takes a village to raise a child.
That's
so
correct.
yeah, and I know that back at that time, everybody was, you know, more in tune with each other and they knew who they was. So yeah, if you did something wrong, the person down the street saw you, and then you might be liable to get your butt whooped. And then before you got home,
Yeah, right.
yeah, right. So yeah, right. Yeah, I heard stories about that as well. And yeah, far as the changing of the guards when the police, how they became more militant. Yeah, and it was a video. Maybe we can try to post it in the links below, where it states that Nixon was the one that created the war on drugs, and that was to infiltrate the urban neighborhoods. And it wasn't until, like you said, the government put their hands in the pot to damage and break up the atomic family, when they start sending the male role models to prison and jails, and
the
children.
And the war.
Yeah, and the war. Yeah, the Vietnam War was
even that was a false flag, man. We weren't supposed to be in the Vietnam War. We weren't supposed to be there. They faked that so that we can get in. The French had already lost to the Vietnamese. That's how
We wasn't
cold.
supposed.
We wasn't supposed to
Uh,
be there. No, we had a ship that
we
went in
wasn't
there.
supposed to be. We wasn't supposed to be in any of those wars. In the World War One, World
No,
War
none of
Two,
them.
Vietnam War, Korean, or Desert Storm. None of those wars had anything to do with the urban neighborhoods, and they tried to even throw this in the pot. If you look at what was the 13th Amendment when they was trying to say
Right,
that
right. You can say that. Yeah.
blacks are not considered,
No,
you
we were
know,
what? Yeah, 1/3. Yeah, 1/3 of a human
one
being. Yeah,
third is
yeah.
classes. So if that's the case, why would you serve for a country that doesn't recognize you?
Because you live there.
That's yeah, well,
They pretty much forced you to
yeah,
do
yeah.
it.
But yeah, they basically, what I'm saying. And again, with the police brutality and going, it's been stated, through television, even comedians, Richard Pryor, he made references to it, and and it exists. But the point of the show is that uh, it has gotten worse, and it is the epitome of the fact that none of it is, even to this day, like Vessel 2 said, it's up to us. We know their plan and their scheme and what they're doing. And so it's up to us to actually to reevaluate, to take a step back and get our stuff together. That's
Okay,
important.
well, that's what I was getting at. That's why I told you about reading the Willie Lynch letter. I was telling
Right.
you, if you read the Willie Lynch letter, that takes you all the way back to when slavery was established in the United States. It was actually in the Virgin Islands where Willie Lynch, who was a plantation owner in Europe, had sent a letter to tell them exactly what they needed to do in order to control their slaves. Don't kill them, because if you kill them, then you lost product. Okay, it's all about economics. Okay, so the Willie Lynch letter is based upon economics. In other words, they're gonna wipe away your language. They're gonna wipe away. We the only people on the planet where they wiped away everything and just kept the skills that we had, that we brought from Africa. We already had the skills to farm and do all of that. Because see, you have to understand, America was built on the backs of Africans. Okay, they were built on our backs because the Europeans that came over here, they were the unwanted. The Queen and them kicked them all out. They went to the United States, they went to Australia, and they went to New Zealand. Okay, they kicked them all out, and they didn't have no skills and nothing. They couldn't do nothing, but they had guns. They had guns, and they had ships, and they were provided with stuff. They bartered and negotiated with stuff. And then we in America, the white boys got their own money and everything, and they was doing cool until Skull Island. That's when the British knew that they lost and America became its own. They lost and everything. In fact, when Africans came here, they was here with the Irish. It was Irish and blacks, and we was free. We was working with the poor whites that was here until they decided to rebel against Europe and stuff like that. And we fought right there with them. And as soon as America got its freedom, they turned on us. Because what happened was United Fruit, look it up, United Fruit. It started when Reagan was in office. The corporation started moving out into the third world. They wanted fruit for pennies on the dollar. Okay? And they go out there and they destroy their infrastructures and everything. And let the gangs take over and everything. Because they can get their fruit for pennies on the dollar. And America wasn't looking at this. This is all corporatized. The same thing like the police. They're corporatized. It's all a corporation now. And we've got Africans now, African Americans in Congress. I mean, we are moving up. We're moving up. We're not the problem anymore. The problem are the migrants. I see what's going on back home. Guatemalans and everything. They didn't left Florida. Yeah, DeSantis is in big trouble right now. And Disney owners behind right now. But, getting back to the police, I'm trying to tell you, they're in big trouble right now because it's not about quotas anymore. They've been hiring white supremacists for a long time, close to 30, 35 years. The white supremacists have infiltrated the police department, and they're the ones causing all the havoc. Okay, if you can't get them out unless you change the culture. You got to change the culture where the police they can be weeded out while they're in school to become a police officer. You can weed them out, but they ain't doing that because you know what? They're getting them for pennies on the dollar. The police that they're bringing in there, they're coming in on low salaries with bad attitudes. And you know, my sister, she went from a police officer at 19 to becoming a sergeant, and from that she became a detective, and from that she became an attorney general, and then she retired. Okay, my uncle, who he was in Colorado, his head of corrections, he was telling me about this whole thing. I mean, my whole family basically been involved. I got people in the FBI in my family. I see that the change is coming, and you cannot have change without chaos. So they stepped up their game with the white supremacy, and especially the Christian nationalists, the evangelicals. I mean, the whole thing is they see we don't have enough white babies anymore. I mean, look at all these migrants. That's what it's about. All these migrants coming in here, they're getting all these jobs and this, that, and the other. I ain't never seen nobody go out there and say, I want to pick oranges. But, you know, the far right, the GOP, or what do you want to call them, the Republicans, they want to get rid of that. You know, they want to get rid of it. It's just a smoke screen. What they want to do is get rid of abortion and make you focus on make you focus, let's see, get rid of abortion, make you focus on racism, then make you focus on CRT, and make you focus on LGBTQ. None of that means anything. Only thing they're scared of is that white people will be in the minority. That's what they're scared of. That is what they're scared of. And
Okay,
the police are out there.
Shorty, can I interject?
Oh, please. I'm sorry. I get
No
heated
problem.
up.
This
I
vessel
apologize.
two, no problem. Interviewed several times on why he wrote the letter and when he wrote the letter, and
Oh, I don't know where you got that information
he's
from.
still
Willie
alive.
Lynch owned it. No,
He's
it's not.
he's
Willie Lynch.
still alive, and he was interviewed on a show called the Carl Nelson Show not too long ago. He came on and he was saying why he wrote the letter. And
okay,
one of the
but I
reasons
can
why
prove
you
to
know
you that
one of the reasons why you okay, so I ask you, the letter itself, when you read it, what did they call us in that letter? Were we black, Negro, black American? What was the terminology they used to represent us in that letter? Do you remember?
Okay, I'm about to pull it up for you right now because it seems this is another thing, misinformation. A lot of people
Right.
don't understand.
And then
Okay,
when it comes to us, we call ourselves Black American or African
no, we're
American.
not.
No, I'm not. I don't know about everybody else, but
Yeah,
I'm
not.
actually Cherokee, and they threw
Yeah,
labels. They threw
don't
labels
tell me
at
that,
us.
man. Don't say
They
that. I'm Cherokee and Blackfoot.
we've had this discussion on our first get down. So I don't use the term Black American. I don't use the term African American either. I think that is a way that keeps us in that box of negativity. And as far as white supremacy, white people are the minority of the planet.
Yes, I understand that.
So what they say and what they do, we repeat it and we let them to have their say-so be perpetrated around the world. I pay no attention to them, and what they want, I truly don't give a damn, because I know what they've done collectively is wrong. So when I look at Europeans, that's what I call them. I don't like to call them white because a white person is an American European creation. Outside of America, there's no such thing as a white person or a black person. That's just terminology that they gave us.
Just Homo sapiens, man. We're all human. We all
Right.
bleed the same. We got
Right.
the same organs. Yeah.
So
it's a game.
yes, it is a game. So I refuse to play their game. And I
don't play that game either.
I give them respect to the point where we all bleeding the same. And I expect that respect to be returned. And if it's not returned, then I know I just can't break bread with you. Right.
That's right.
So
you walk away, you can't break bread.
So
well, I'm gonna tell you about Willie Lynch. You were talking about it. Willie Lynch was in 1712, man. And he spoke. No, this is the truth.
What was the terminology they grew? What was the terminology they used for us as a people, according to the letter?
The Negroes.
Thanks for your question. We're coming for a break real soon. Well, why don't you tell us, because every time I have you on there, we always ask about the Willie Lynch letter. Of course, I know you're tired of talking about Willie Lynch, but you're the man who discovered that it was a fake. What was it that how did you figure it out? Because everybody was going around quoting the Willie Lynch letter, and even now, some people are saying that it's still true. Dr. Al Penn is known by most folks now, not of all the scholarship that he's done, but the fact that he outed the guy who wrote the Willie Lynch letter, because some people refuse to believe that it was a fake. Dr. Al Penn, I just want to get your thoughts on that before I take some more calls for you.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate it. Well, the Willie Lynch myth is arguably the greatest myth among black folks in the 20th, in the Western Hemisphere, in the 20th and now 21st century. But I ignored it because there's a lot of nonsense that's out there. As a professional historian, we hear all kind of craziness. But this one continued to resurface, and I finally decided to address it because folks kept mentioning this so-called Willie Lynch speech that was allegedly given in 1712. And I first dealt with this it's back around 2005. I did a presentation to show that this is nothing more than a modern hoax. That the person who wrote it clearly was somebody who was black in the community, who wrote the fake speech after the Black Power movement in 1966. Because if you read it, you see that he doesn't use the N-word. He doesn't say anything negative, literally, about black folks in our description, but he uses black with a capital B. Nobody was using the term or the word black with a capital B as an ethnic indicator of black people until the Black Power movement burst on the scene in June of '66. That's when it became chic and vogue and popular to talk about black with a capital B. So I knew that whoever wrote it had to have been after the 1960s. Also, it was clear the person didn't know that much about U.S. history because the person claimed, the hoaxer claimed that there were black people hanging from a tree. Well, that did not take place until after the Civil Wars when that became popular, not in 1712. Also, the person was pretty familiar with the psychology of black folks by mentioning the name Lynch, like Willie Lynch. That's a code word for danger for us. But also it was very clear that the person was a little bit more experienced in life because they mentioned King James. Well, first of all, in 1712, King James had been gone for an entire century. Nobody in England would be mentioning King James because Queen Anne was ruling. And just like if I asked to inform listeners that you have, Brother Carl, and they're very informed, if they don't look it up, if I ask people right now who was the U.S. president 100 years ago, very few people can state that because it's not important. So why would someone be mentioning the U.S. president 100 years ago, Woodrow Wilson, or whoever they want to come up with 100 years ago when it's not important now? That's the same thing. That's the same thing that it didn't really make any sense for so-called Willie Lynch mentioning King James back in 1712. Plus, there's no original records anyway. Documents don't just pop up out of thin air. Where's the original? There's no original. This was made up. And so Kwabena Ashanti, when I wrote that the person was a brother from the community who was in his 20s or 30s that did not know much about U.S. history and didn't have much.
So he called us Negro. This is something that you pulled up on the line and on the internet right now.
Oh, you can pull this up you can get the book. The Willie Lynch book is out. It's $6.95. It's written by Willie Lynch. It's WILLIELYNCH. It's a paperback. $6.95. You can read it, man.
Okay.
And
so
it'll tell you all about it.
I'm
in 1712.
I'm gonna let that go. If
it's not a problem, man.
If the Willie Lynch letter has influenced all of us to capitalism is their system, totalitarianism is their system, fascism is their system. All of the isms came from Europe.
Mm-hmm.
So
it came from Europe.
Right.
That's true.
They brought all of that to Turtle Island.
Skull Island. You're talking about Skull Island, right?
Okay.
And that's where the Federal Reserve came from. And that was a huckster right there. The Federal Reserve. That was a huckster right there. And they bought into that, and now we're at where we're at now. Basically, the United States is modern day Rome. Now it's going to burn unless we make the changes. They know that. It's going to burn just like Rome did. And we're a warrior nation. And we keep the peace in the world.
Yes.
We keep the peace in the world.
I don't know if we keep the peace, but we cause a lot of ruckus.
Yeah, well, that's who I'm talking about. Relativity.
Okay.
Plus and minus, up and down.
We've done a lot of damage around the world. Yes.
Of course.
Keeping the peace for our own benefit. Yes.
That's correct. We keep it for our own benefit. That's what Rome did. Kept it for their own benefit. And they ended up burning.
Romans are European. So what more can you expect?
Well, you think about it. Well, if you want to look at Christianity, then you got to look back to Constantine, because Christianity wasn't nothing until Constantine got into play, and he started saying, "Hey, man, this is another way to control the people." And a lot of people don't understand that. I mean, man, I follow the King James. I said, "Did you see King James' first book?" They said, "No, what was his first book?" I said, "Demonology." They said, "What? King James' first book was what?" I said, "Demonology."
All in a nutshell, I'm gonna kind of like summarize this up. All in a nutshell, we look at history. There's a lot of misdoings that's been going on, and that hasn't been actually corrected even to this day.
The police have to be reformed.
There's more than just repeats the police as well, as we stated, as we had this conversation and debate. We know that it's politics coming from a European idealism background all the way to Congress and the government, and so all these things stimulate and has been a problem from day one. And so this is the reason why we did this episode, because it was something that we need to address and that we will talk about.
Approximately 50 years. Yes.
So
you got to undo 50 years from here.
We got to do more than that. But what we're going to do is we're going to somehow come back to this subject at a later date. We're going to invite you back, and we're going to go more detail.
I like this brother you got here, man. I like this brother you got here, man.
Of course, Vessel 2 is on point, and he always been on point, and that's why we're doing this, because we're here to not only to stimulate your mind, give you something to think about, to educate you as well. As far as the Willie Lynch letter, we're gonna come back to that on a later date. Okay.
Yeah, Willie Lynch is out of the West Indies, man. He's out of the West Indies.
We're gonna work on it. For those that want to read upon it, do so. But there is more pressing matters that we could just be focusing on. I'm Vessel 1, and I'm about to sign out with Vessel 2. And any last comments, words? We'll go around. Shorty, you got about a minute. State your piece.
All right. If you don't know where you came from, you'll never know where you're going. So you've got to go back and study that stuff and find out how people got messed up like this. So I'm gonna leave it there. If you don't know where you came from, you ain't gonna know where you're going. So you got to figure that out. That's all I got to say.
I hear that. That's hip. Vessel 2, last statements, and would you grace us with your final thoughts?
Thank you, Vessel 1. Yes, great show as usual. A lot of knowledge in this show. If you need to pause it, rewind, play it back again. Brother Shorty is a very knowledgeable elder.
So are you.
Thank you. And yes, we have all been fed propaganda on all sides. We've been targeted. The best advice I can give any of us out here is to stand on your square. Make sure you keep your head on a swivel. Question everything that you hear, everything that you read. And if you have further questions, do your own research about it, and make sure that you speak truth every time you open your mouth. Peace.
Yeah, I love it. Peace.